200 motorcycles rolled into our neighborhood on a Saturday morning, and I knew right then that my son's life had just changed forever. I stood at the kitchen window, watching them line up the entire street in perfect formation, chrome gleaming in the sunlight like some kind of metal army. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. But back then, just 3 weeks earlier, when Marcus first told me he'd fixed that man's bike, I had no idea this was coming. Marcus was 16, all long limbs and quiet intensity, the kind of kid who'd rather spend his Saturday morning under a car hood than anywhere else. We lived in a modest neighborhood on the north side of Detroit, the kind of place where people minded their business and you didn't ask too many questions about who rode through after dark. Our house was nothing fancy, a 1970s brick ranch with a sagging porch that my late husband had always promised to fix. That was 5 years ago now. I'd learned to stop waiting for promises. The morning Marcus told me about the bike, I was making his favorite breakfast: scrambled eggs with cheese, turkey bacon, toast with real butter. He came down the stairs rubbing sleep from his eyes, his oversized hoodie hanging off one shoulder, and I could already tell something was different about him. There was a kind of electricity under his skin. The way he moved, the way his eyes were brighter than usual. I set the plate down in front of him, and he smiled, that rare, genuine smile that made him look like the little boy he'd been before life got complicated. "Something good happened to you," I said, pouring myself a second cup of coffee. The kitchen was small and warm, with morning light streaming through the window that faced our overgrown backyard. I had the day off from the hospital, where I worked as a nursing assistant, and I was savoring the quiet before everything else demanded my attention. Marcus looked up from his plate, and for a moment I thought he might not tell me. He was the kind of child who kept things close to his chest, who didn't overflow with details about his day the way some kids did. "You know that bike that's been sitting in Mr. Chen's garage?" he asked, taking a bite of eggs. "The one that's been there for like 2 years?" I knew the one. Mr. Chen ran the auto repair shop 3 blocks from our house, a cluttered, oil-stained place where Marcus had been hanging around since he was 14, learning everything he could about engines. Mr. Chen had taken a liking to him, let him work odd jobs on weekends, paid him in cash and knowledge in equal measure. It was one of the few things I didn't worry about. Marcus had a good mentor, someone steady. "The motorcycle?" I said, sitting down across from him with my coffee. The mug was chipped on the rim, and I'd been meaning to throw it away, but I liked the weight of it in my hands. "Yeah. Some biker brought it in maybe 2 years ago, paid Mr. Chen to fix it, and then just never came back for it. Mr. Chen said he'd tried to track the guy down, but the number was disconnected, the address was fake, everything. So it just sat there, getting dustier. Engine was completely shot, seized up, timing belt snapped, fuel injectors clogged. Mr. Chen said it would cost more to fix it properly than it was worth, so he just left it." I was listening, but I was also watching my son. The way his hands moved when he talked about engines, like he was conducting an invisible orchestra. The way his entire face changed when he was passionate about something. "What about it?" I asked. "I fixed it," Marcus said simply, then took another bite of eggs like he hadn't just said something extraordinary. I set my coffee down slowly. "You fixed it?" "Yeah, well, mostly. Mr. Chen said I could work on it if I wanted to, as a project. He didn't think it was possible, but he said if I wanted to waste my time, that was on me." Marcus looked up at me, and I saw something new in his expression. Not arrogance, but confidence. Real, earned confidence. "I found parts at the salvage yard. Mixed and matched. Nothing original, but it works. I got it running 3 days ago." "Marcus," I said, and I could hear the pride in my own voice. "That's incredible. That's actually incredible, baby." He shrugged, but he was smiling. "It's just an engine. Anybody could do it if they spent the time." That's where he was wrong, I knew. Not everybody had the patience, the focus, the kind of stubborn intelligence it took to look at broken things and see how to make them whole again. That was Marcus's gift. It always had been. "What happened to the bike?" I asked. "Is Mr. Chen gonna try to sell it?" "A guy came by the shop," Marcus said, and here his voice changed slightly, became more careful. "I don't know his name. Mr. Chen knew him, though. He was looking at the bike, asked if it was for sale. Mr. Chen said it wasn't his to sell, but the guy could take it if he wanted to fix it himself. And then... Marcus paused, reaching for another piece of bacon. Then the guy asked who fixed it, and Mr. Chen told him it was me. I felt something shift in my stomach, a small, uneasy flutter. What did he say? He asked if I wanted anything for it, for the work. I told him I didn't do it for money, I did it for Mr. Chen, to learn. But the guy, he was real serious about it. He said a kid who could make something like that run again from parts other people threw away. That was worth something. That was worth respect. The kitchen suddenly felt very still. Outside, I could hear the neighbor's dog barking, the distant sound of someone mowing their lawn, normal Saturday morning sounds. But something in my chest was tightening, like I was standing on the edge of something and couldn't see the drop. Did he leave? I asked carefully. Yeah, but he took the bike. And he left Mr. Chen his number, said if I ever needed anything at all, I should have Mr. Chen call him. Said he owed me. I didn't say anything for a long moment. I just looked at my son, at this bright, talented boy who had no idea how the world worked, how favors created chains, how owing people things could become dangerous. Marcus, I said slowly, did this man seem safe? Marcus laughed, that short, dismissive laugh that teenagers use when they think adults are being paranoid. Mom, he just wanted to pay me for fixing his bike. He was nice, really nice actually, not like the guys who usually come into the shop. But I was already thinking about the kinds of guys who usually came into that shop. The ones with tattoos crawling up their necks, the ones who spoke in low voices and looked over their shoulders. The motorcycle community in Detroit wasn't exactly known for being a bunch of choir boys. And I had that feeling, the one I'd learned to trust over the years, that something had just shifted in my son's life, that some door had opened that I couldn't close again. Don't accept anything from him, I said, and my voice came out harder than I intended. Don't take money, don't take anything. You understand me? Marcus looked at me like I was being unreasonable. Mom, it's not like that. He was just... I don't care what he was. You don't know these people. You don't know what accepting something from them means. But even as I was saying it, I could see it was already too late. I could see it in the way Marcus's face had closed off, in the way he'd retreated back into that place where he didn't share things with me anymore. I'd just pushed him further away, and I knew it. I just didn't know how far away he was about to go. I got up and walked to the window, looking out at our small backyard, at the fence that needed painting, at the life that suddenly felt much more fragile than it had 10 minutes ago. Behind me, I could hear Marcus finishing his breakfast, could hear the clink of his fork against the plate, the sound of him standing up and rinsing the dish. He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. That was 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks of me trying to forget about it, of Marcus not mentioning the biker again, of me almost convincing myself that it was just a small thing, a moment that didn't mean anything. I was wrong about that. So very wrong. And now, watching 200 motorcycles pull up in front of my house on a Saturday morning, I understood that my son had just entered a world I couldn't protect him from, and that everything, absolutely everything, was about to change. I pulled back from the kitchen window and steadied my breathing. 200 motorcycles lined the street in front of my house, engines ticking as they cooled, and I could see the riders, men and women, leather and chrome, tattoos and serious faces, all looking toward my front door. My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat against my thighs to stop the trembling. Marcus was upstairs in his room. He didn't know they were here yet. The first knock on the door was solid, authoritative, not aggressive, but impossible to ignore. I took a breath and opened it. Standing on my porch was a man in his 50s, maybe older, with a gray beard and eyes that had seen a lot of living. He wore a leather kuta with patches I didn't recognize, and his hands, scarred, weathered, hung relaxed at his sides. Behind him, I could see more of them, standing respectfully at a distance, engines off now, the entire street gone quiet except for the occasional creak of leather. Mrs. Washington, he asked, and his voice was surprisingly gentle. Yes, I said, my voice barely steady. What is this? Why are you here? My name's Frank Kowalski. I run the Detroit chapter of the Iron Cross MC. Marcus fixed my bike 3 weeks ago. Did a hell of a job with nothing but scrap parts and determination. I told him if he ever needed anything, he should reach out. Well, he did. Not with words, but with actions. And in our world, actions speak louder than anything else. I didn't understand. I don't know what you're talking about. Frank stepped back slightly, and I saw a younger man emerge from the crowd. 25, maybe, with a scar down the left side of his face. This is Derek, Frank said. 2 months ago, Derek put his hands on a girl, 15 years old, daughter of one of our members. Marcus witnessed it. He didn't say anything to the cops, didn't make a scene, but he took a video, clear as day, and he gave it to the girl's father. No payment asked, no attention wanted. Just the right thing. My legs felt unsteady. Marcus did that? Derek's facing 6 counts of assault and attempted rape. He's in county holding right now, and the case is solid because your son had the integrity to document what he saw and the courage to hand it over. In our world, that kind of character means something. It means everything. Frank's eyes held mine. So we're here to let him know that he's got 200 people who will stand behind him, no matter what comes next. I heard footsteps on the stairs behind me. Marcus appeared, still in his sleep clothes, confusion and then fear crossing his face as he saw the motorcycles outside. Mom, what? These people are here because of you, I said quietly, and I turned to look at my son, at this young man I'd raised alone, who'd made a choice I never knew he'd made. Tell me about the video, Marcus. Tell me everything. He glanced at Frank, then back at me. There's a girl at school, Maya. Derek has been following her, threatening her. 3 weeks ago, I saw him corner her behind the bleachers. I had my phone. I recorded it. Then I went to her dad. He comes into the shop sometimes, and I gave him the footage. I told him I didn't want anyone to know it was me. But we found out, Frank said. We always do. And we investigate our own. Derek admitted everything to the police after the video surfaced. He's going away for a long time. And your son, he looked at Marcus with something like respect in his eyes. Your son did what thousands of adults wouldn't do. He saw injustice, and he didn't look away. Over the next week, the story came out in full. Derek had a pattern. 3 other girls came forward once they knew there was evidence. Police found devices in his apartment, messages on his phone dating back 4 years. What Marcus had captured was the final piece that locked the case shut. The prosecutor called Marcus twice to confirm details for the trial, but the video was everything. Derek took a plea deal rather than face trial, 15 years minimum. But what Marcus didn't know, what I didn't know until Frank came back to the house alone the following Saturday, was that Derek's older brother was part of a rival crew, and he'd been looking for leverage against the Iron Cross MC for years. He'd been protecting Derek, paying off cops, moving him between states. Derek's arrest was a major blow to his operation, and he blamed the club. There's going to be some heat, Frank told us, sitting at our kitchen table with coffee I'd made from genuine nervousness. Nothing directed at Marcus, but people are going to know who he is, and that makes him a target. We're not going to let anything happen to him, but he needs to understand the position he's in. What does that mean? I asked, and I could hear the sharp edge in my voice. What does he need to understand exactly? It means he's got protection now, whether he wants it or not. It means if anything happens, anything, he calls one of these numbers. Frank slid a card across the table. On it were 5 phone numbers and nothing else. It means he's part of something bigger than himself, and he needs to be careful about who he trusts. Marcus had been quiet through the entire conversation. Now he looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. The weight of consequences. The knowledge that doing the right thing sometimes comes with a price. I'm going to finish school, Marcus said to Frank. I'm going to learn as much as I can from Mr. Chen. I'm going to stay out of trouble and out of anyone's business but my own. Frank smiled. That's exactly what I hoped you'd say. And that's why we're here, Mrs. Washington. Not to recruit him, not to pull him into anything. Just to make sure he knows he's not alone, and that there are people who recognize his character. That's rare. Real rare. 3 months later, Derek's sentencing came down. 18 years. The prosecutor specifically mentioned in her closing statement that without the video evidence provided by a concerned citizen, the case would have been much more difficult to prosecute. She didn't name Marcus, The judge had ordered his identity protected, but I watched my son sit in the gallery with me, and I saw him nod slightly when the sentence was read. Derek's family stared at us with pure hatred. His mother cried. His brother, who I later learned was Miguel Rivas, head of a crew called the Poison Angels, didn't attend the trial. But 3 weeks after the sentencing, someone threw a brick through our living room window with a note attached. "Your son is dead." That's when everything changed again. I called Frank immediately. He was at our house within 20 minutes with 2 other club members, and they didn't ask questions. They just started planning. Marcus was moved to stay with Frank's family, a large house in a safer neighborhood. Police were called, a report was filed, and a detective named Sarah Chen, no relation to Mr. Chen at the shop, took the case seriously. "We've been watching Rivas for 3 years," she told me in our kitchen, sitting in the same chair Frank had sat in. "He's careful, very careful. But we've got informants, and they're telling us he's unstable since his brother's conviction. He blames everyone, the cops, the club, your son, especially your son." "What do we do?" I asked. My hands were steady now. Fear had burned away into something colder, something more useful. "We wait," Detective Chen said, "and we document everything. Every threat, every suspicious person, every vehicle that passes your house more than once. We're building a case against him for witness intimidation, and we're monitoring his known associates. But you need to understand, this could take time." It took 2 months. During those months, Marcus stayed with Frank, attended school from there, and came home on weekends with a security detail that would have been funny if it wasn't so necessary. I worked my shifts at the hospital, came home to a house with a boarded-up window, and tried to pretend my life wasn't suspended in amber, waiting for the other shoe to drop. The other shoe dropped on a Tuesday evening. Detective Chen called me at work. "We got him," she said without preamble. "Rivas. He hired someone to burn your house down. We've been monitoring his communications and we caught him on a wire giving the order. We also found evidence that he paid someone to follow Marcus, to get access to his school, to watch your work schedule. We've got enough to put him away for a very long time." I didn't feel relief. I felt something else, a kind of cold satisfaction that surprised me with its intensity. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Miguel Rivas's defense team tried everything, claiming he was being framed, that the wire recording was inadmissible, that the informant was unreliable. But Detective Chen was meticulous. The evidence was airtight. And Marcus, who testified from behind a protective screen, was articulate and calm. He described the threats, the surveillance, the fear. He never raised his voice, he never cried. He simply told the truth. On the day the verdict came in, guilty on all counts, conspiracy to commit arson, witness intimidation, attempted murder, Rivas stood up in the courtroom and pointed directly at Marcus. "You're finished," he hissed, his voice carrying through the courtroom before the bailiffs moved to restrain him. "You and your mother both. We'll find you. We'll find you both." That's when Marcus stood up. He turned to face Rivas directly, and his voice, steady, even, with a clarity that seemed to come from somewhere very deep inside him, cut through the chaos. "You can't reach me," he said, "because I'm not the scared kid you were looking for. I'm the one who did the right thing, and that's going to keep me safer than anything you could ever do." The judge gavelled for order, and Rivas was removed from the courtroom screaming. But the damage was done, or rather, it was healed. The jury saw a young man with integrity. They saw a teenager who had faced down a criminal enterprise and hadn't blinked. And they saw his mother, sitting in the front row, steady and unwavering. Rivas got 25 years. 2 weeks after the verdict, Frank came to our house again. The living room window had been replaced, and the boarded-up look was finally gone. He sat in our kitchen for the last time, and he looked older somehow, like the weight of taking care of people had finally caught up with him. "Derek's filing an appeal," Frank said without preamble. "But the new evidence from Rivas's case is going to make that very difficult. He's looking at spending his 20s in prison, and he's got another 25 years stacked on top of it when he gets out of county, if he ever does." "And Rivas?" I asked. "Rivas is going to die in prison. Not because anyone's going to kill him, that's not how we operate. But because a man like that, without the ability to control things, without power, without freedom, he won't last long." The system will take care of him. And Marcus? I asked. What happens to him now? Frank smiled, and it was a real smile, tired but genuine. He goes back to his life. He finishes school. He works with Mr. Chen. He becomes whatever he's going to become. And he knows that there are 200 people who will remember what he did, who will respect him for it, and who will be there if he ever truly needs us. But that's all. He doesn't owe us anything. He never did. 3 months after Rivas was sentenced, Marcus turned 17. Mr. Chen offered him a full-time job in the shop after school and on weekends, with a promise that if he kept his grades up, there would be a path to owning the business someday. Frank and 2 other club members came to his birthday dinner, brought him a leather jacket with no patches, and told him he was welcome anywhere. Marcus thanked them, accepted the jacket, and then went back to being a teenager, focused on school, on engines, on the girl he'd asked to prom. I watched him rebuild his life with something close to amazement. He didn't talk about the threats, the trial, the fear. He just moved forward, carrying the knowledge that he'd done something important, that he'd stood up when it mattered, and that there was a price and a reward to integrity. And they came in the same package. A year later, I was making breakfast again, the same scrambled eggs, the same turkey bacon, the same toast with real butter, and Marcus came down in his school uniform, ready for another day. He was 18 now, tall and solid with his father's eyes and his mother's stubborn jaw. "Your coffee's getting cold," he said, sitting down across from me. I looked at my son, at this young man who'd taught me something I never expected to learn, that sometimes courage looks like fixing a broken engine with spare parts, and sometimes it looks like standing up in a courtroom and telling the truth even when it terrifies you. Sometimes it looks like both. "I was just thinking," I said, "about that morning you told me about the bike. Do you remember? You said anybody could fix an engine if they spent the time." Marcus smiled, that same rare, genuine smile that had started everything. "I was wrong about that." "You were," I agreed. "You need more than time. You need integrity. You need to know the difference between what's easy and what's right." He took a bite of eggs and didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. He already knew.